Welcome to Situation Room. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's episode we'll be talking about Operation BUNYAN and MARSOUS. Of course, Pakistan's response to the Indian provocations that we were seeing since the past many days. Pakistan was showing a lot of restraint and very well measured and very responsible stance that we were seeing from the Pakistan side. All the international community had also appreciated the well measured and responsible stance being taken from the Pakistan side. Pakistan had been urging the international community to urge India to de-escalate the provocations, but we saw that India, being ignorant and paying no heeds to the turmoil and chaos it was plunging the region into, it continued with its aggressive posture and its aggression. Pakistan, reserving the right to defend itself, its sovereignty and territorial integrity, did respond. The Pakistani nation, a very proud and a very brave nation, in step with the armed forces, expressed the resolve to defend the motherland at all costs. And with this operation of BUNYAN and MARSOUS launched by the armed forces of Pakistan, we saw how a very befitting response is given to the enemy, a response that it is going to remember for decades to come. Of course, we saw how the propaganda, how the narrative building continued on the Indian side. We also know how they're very creative with their propaganda and war hysteria with regards to their Bollywood movies. But when we talk about the grand realities, the Pakistan Army has shown its operational readiness. Of course, in Beas in India, BrahMos missile depot was destroyed, and all these are subject to confirmation by the security sources. In Udhampur, the pride of India S-400 air defense system has been annihilated by the Pakistan Armed Forces. Air bases were also targeted. The Pathankot, Jalandhar, and of course the headquarters of the Northern Command had also been a target. We're also hearing that the Suratgarh and Sirsa air base have also been targeted by the Pakistan Armed Forces in response and giving a befitting reply to the enemy, as Indian provocations were not stopping. The international community had called upon India to stop with its aggression and escalatory posture, but Pakistan has responded, and it is a response that India is going to remember since for the decades to come. And since the response by the Pakistan side, we also see how there's international pressure on the Indian side and support for Pakistan within the region, as India had since the past many years acting as a regional bully with its hegemonic designs. We'll be discussing in detail all the different impacts of Operation BUNYAN al-MARSOUS and the impact it is going to have on the regional situation, as South Asia at the moment stands at a very critical time with tensions reaching an all-time high. In the studios, we've been joined by Dr. Ali Hamza, who's an analyst, and we've also been joined by our correspondent Hassan Gilani. We'll be talking to both these gentlemen in detail with regards to Operation BUNYAN al-MARSOUS. Coming towards Dr. Ali Hamza, so a day when the Pakistan Army has given a befitting response. Of course, we see the sentiments in the people, a very proud and a very brave nation. And of course, there's patriotism that is overflowing at the moment. A response that was to be given, that should have been given, and that is now given. A message that is clear, not only to India, to the world itself, that Pakistan will defend its sovereignty, the nation stands with its armed forces, and we will not compromise on our national interests. What's your take on this Operation BUNYAN al-MARSOUS and Pakistan's position now after launching this operation despite showing restraint since the past many days?
Thank you for having me, Rafae. First of all, your intro just nailed it. The impact of BUNYAN al-MARSOUS is very much now vivid, as the word BUNYAN al-MARSOUS means the unshakable wall. So we actually came up, we as a nation, as a military, as a political stream came up as a strong, unshakable wall. And the impact, as you were mentioning about BUNYAN al-MARSOUS, that will be remembered not by the, by the India, in fact, but by the global powers. Now, what is the impact? The impact is not only the military impact. That is on one side, we have shown our muscles that we were not ready, we didn't wish to show our muscles, but thank you to India, made us show the muscles, and that made the signature. But beyond this, there are other impacts the BUNYAN al-MARSOUS had. Number one, the political shock India had. Now, the Modi government is now in a condition where they have to face the opposition, the sane minds in India, and to now justify that what was the reason, why did you want to start it? I mean, what was the point of starting it? For example, they were blaming Pakistan for the terrorism thing. So is it the norm the world want to set that, okay, blame someone and then attack the sovereignty of a nation? Definitely the sane world does not want it. So the political shock the Modi government has, it is not easy for the government, the Modi's government, to recollect its image. Beyond that, if we go into the social impact, the panic they are talking about, Pakistanis, I was just coming to the studio, and on my way I see the dozens and the hundreds of Pakistanis having the flags in hands, and they were rushing on the roads, showing the solidarity with the military, with the forces, with Pakistan. So the panic is there. You know, the recent things that happened on different platforms in India, the fields, that created a real panic. Another aspect, and definitely in the program we'll stretch that out, that is a business impact India is going to have.
Definitely.
I mean, yeah.
We'll come towards that in detail. I'd
yeah,
like to
so that is one another impact. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Moving towards Mr. Hassan, as I'd like your comments as well. We've been covering the situation, how the escalation from the Indian side since the Pahalgam false flag operation, and we know it's India's patterns of the old. They continue with their false flag operations. They use those false flag operations as a pretext for their illegal and unilateral actions. They've had this pattern and they've been repeating it. We've seen it in 2019. The Pakistan side, of course, there were war exercises going on, there were weapon system being tested, but at the same time, the military and the government of Pakistan was, and even the media on the Pakistan side, was very responsible and was showing a lot of restraint. Pakistan has responded, and in a very befitting manner, but as we've been covering the developments since days, the difference that we see on both the sides, I'd like your comment with regards to being responsible countries.
Right. See, I, being a media person, have been very closely monitoring how the international media and how the Indian media has reacted to that. For the last several hours, I have been very closely monitoring how the international media is treating this retaliation launched by Pakistan against India. And it's very pleasing and very comforting to see that the international media is saying that Pakistan has retaliated, Pakistan has reacted, Pakistan has fought back. None of them said that Pakistan has attacked, launched an operation, or launched an offensive. This shows that India's dream to portray Pakistan as an aggressor in the eyes of the international media has failed, has turned to ashes, because they were trying to engage us in a fight in such a way that we become the aggressors. We responded with utmost care, responsibility, and transparency. Whatever we did was shown to the international media last night by the DG ISPR. We have not targeted any of India's civilians, they have. We have not targeted any civilian location, they have. We have respected the UN laws, they haven't. We have respected the UN, the Geneva Convention, they haven't. There's a lot of difference between how we fought and how they are fighting. So this is, of course, a very welcome development, because their attempts to malign Pakistan, to portray Pakistan in the negative light internationally has failed. International media is completely showing the right picture. As far as Indian media is concerned, I no longer consider it a media. They are basically a mouthpiece and the propagandist of the RSS. If you look at the current situation, we are seeing that nearly 80% of the media, mainstream media, is directly controlled by the Modi government. As a matter of fact, it's a short sort of a history of this media, that when Modi came to power in 2014, there was a massive reshuffle in the media scene in India, and the entire media landscape underwent a massive transformation, which is now biased towards Modi government. All of those credible, objective journalists in media houses were removed from their posts, and that is when the term Godi media was coined by an Indian journalist named Rajiv Kumar. Since then, the world knows what Godi media is, we know, and of course everybody knows. Now there are only 20-25% journalists left who are actually doing objective journalism and showing the world the right picture. Otherwise, 80% of the media is only misleading their own media, their own people, misleading the entire world, and projecting as if India is emerging triumphant in this war, which is absolutely nonsense. So I think it's very challenging for the people within India to actually get access to the true and objective journalism. But I think the way Pakistan is carrying this entire situation is admirable for all of us.
Definitely it is. And of course, we're living in digital times. And I'd like Mr. Aniza first comment on this. Thank you for joining us in the studios, being part of this very critical moment that we're seeing. when we talk about the digital age, of course, misinformation is a huge problem for the world, and it is something that the world is collectively trying to curb. And when we talk about the past few days, what we're seeing coming from the Indian channels and how loud they were, how there was no factual reporting, how there was propaganda, and even there was AI-generated news and visuals that were being shown to the Indian masses. This is not just affecting India itself and Indian people. It is a problem that the whole international community faces, misinformation. In these times, in this digital era, when the world community, when the whole masses are focused on curbing misinformation, curbing fake news, and curbing lies and propaganda, all we see from the Indian side is propaganda and misinformation and all this fake warmongering and war hysteria. No accountability by the world community. However, despite the fact being this misinformation problem is a huge problem, not just facing one country, but the entire world at large. Your comment on that?
I will indulge you a bit at the background of it, what was happening. Since early 2000s, or you can say from 2010s, the social media platforms realized that there was a lot of content on the social media which was violent, which was abusive, which was divisive. So there were actual fact checkers who were placed on these platforms to check. But then Western societies realized that by watching that content, people got so sick and depressive and violent in their own lives that they started to sublet and subcontract these fact checkers to countries like India. So a lot many such ecosystem was created there.
Sorry to cut you here.
Yeah.
We have a very important breaking news coming in. We'll continue the conversation right after we get this update. Well, continuing with the conversation, moving towards Mr. Aneek Zafar, sir, as you were talking about.
So I was talking about these fact check forms, and then these forms ultimately started turning into troll forms. Now you imagine that in India there is a large ecosystem of BPOs and all that, and all these are associated with these, and many of these are associated with these social media platforms. So consuming that kind of content, all these guys have become very extremist, and that kind of mindset has been capitalized on by BJP. So that right-wing ecosystem has been created, like my fellow panelist was pointing out, that it has become such a huge system within Indian society that any rational, logical thinking journalist or opinion maker has been sidelined. Many of them have found it much prudent to align instead of resist. Because of a number of factors. They cannot take the heat, they cannot take the economic fallout of all that. So what we are now witnessing is that India and that ecosystem is being used to project falsehood, propaganda, and then next day, day before yesterday, when the whole night they were making false claims, tall claims, chest thumping, and next day they were saying, okay guys, this was a psyop operation. Again, psyop operation on your own nation or on Pakistan, because Pakistani society was like, wow, no, we know that nothing has happened. Even someone sitting in a village knew that this is all bullcrap. But their own people were believing it. So this is the kind of operation they are trying to run. That is why, and if you look at your own social media feeds, suddenly you are seeing that a lot many Indian accounts are infiltrating in your own social media feeds. So this is algorithmic tinkering that these Indian troll farms are doing on these social media platforms. So Pakistani people should be very careful in consuming this the information coming through this social media.
Definitely. Coming towards Dr. Ali Hamza with regards to how the conversation has shaped up and coming on today's developments that we see. Of course, when we talk about the restraint that Pakistan had been showing, and despite the restraint, there was operational readiness. We also saw at the Wagah border how there was parades being held, and we saw the military might with regards to the weapons testings that we saw in the past days. Of course, when we talk about the Indian side, there was a lot of war hysteria, war mongering going on. But when we talk about operational readiness, they've suffered some losses, and they're losses that they can't even talk about because they fear the embarrassment that they have to face in front of their people. But when we talk about the operational readiness and how the response was given, of course, the Indian side with its warmongering and war hysteria and all war jingoism, it suffered heavy losses, whereas the Pakistan side, despite showing restraint, of course, there was operational readiness, there was military might, but we were showing restraint. And now, with the response that we've given, of course, it is a lesson that India is going to remember since a very long time, for a very long time. Of course, when we talk about the weapon system as well, many are talking about how the valor, the vigor of the armed forces is more than the resources with regards to the weaponry and technology that they have. Similar is what we're seeing with regards to the stock markets also plummeting and skyrocketing with regards to certain arms manufacturers. Your take on that?
Aeronautical industry around the globe has seen a little shift now, as we've seen the drop in some aeronauticals, stocks and the rise in the others.
Well, why not name them? The French companies, they're losing it.
And the Chinese aeronautical industry actually saw the rise. And the interesting part is why the Chinese are happy, because they did not get engaged into the war, and somebody, as Anik Sahab said, the bull crap, made us use a weapon and show the world how strong aeronautically they are. But it's not one thing we need to understand. Quantity over excellence. It's not only the weapon you have, the man behind the gun, the people who actually were handling that machine. I mean, we have to salute them. And as Anik was mentioning about how the society, Indian society, I mean, their cognitive level has, shrinked and squeezed down, and the sane minds are sided, it shows through the media. When we say war-mongering narrative or media, it means we are talking about emotional. I mean, they don't speak sense anymore. They think that if the quantity is big, I mean, definitely it's a bigger country, bigger weaponry, so they're just looking into the quantity, but it was the war of quantity versus excellence. And the excellence, we don't need to tell. And as we talk about the fake news, DG ISPR has categorically said that the digital signature is the only evidence and the proof the world can check who did what. So it's not 1965 that we did not have enough technological apparatus to figure it out who did what. The world knows it. So that's again when you look at the Indian media and we see them showcasing not only in Indian media. In the morning, the briefing given by their colonels and they refused that, no, there is no harm to S-400, nothing happened, but the evidence is there and the world will see, and definitely we will surface it when the time comes.
Well, it seems like, I'd like give an example. When an ostrich wants to, it doesn't want to face a threat or doesn't want to face.
But closing eyes
closing eyes does not
remove the threats.
Yeah, and it doesn't even remove the embarrassment that India is facing. So they'll have to be answerable to their own people and take accountability for all the voice area that they had been propagating since the past many days as well. Hasan Gilani, your take on when we talk about the war hysteria, war jingoism, how the Indian side, and of course the diplomatic, we also saw there was a diplomatic angle to it, and how there was the international community that was engaged with regards to the heightened tensions in South Asia. We also saw how there was a lot of support for Pakistan with regards to being a very responsible country. Your take on that?
Well, Rafae, indeed, Pakistan was able to successfully draw a tremendous amount of international support. But at the same time, the role of the international community, particularly the UN, in making sure that Pakistan and India de-escalate their tension has been somewhat dismal. Because mere expression of concern, mere expression of the desire to help the two countries engage is not enough. The point is that the UN or the international community did not get constructively engaged with India and Pakistan to make sure that the engagement actually produces the desired results, productive results, so that this point that we are standing now does not even come. Not even a slap on the wrist for Modi, for what he has done and what he's doing right now. It seems to be operating beyond, above all sort of international laws, all conventions, all norms of decency, all norms of morality. I don't know why international community is letting India operate as a sacred cow. Pakistan on its end has been trying all it possibly could to make sure that we do not reach this particular point. As a matter of fact, a lot of voices are now also being heard which question that Pakistan is taking action against India, which is fine, but it should have been done earlier. The point is that Pakistan did not give India a chance. Pakistan gave peace a chance. And now at this point, Pakistan is not answerable to any world capital, because Pakistan at its level did all it possibly could. Pakistan did not leave a single stone unturned in making sure that peace prevails and conflict is avoided. That never happened. Pakistan went to the US, Pakistan went to all the Arab countries, Pakistan went to the United Nations, Pakistan engaged diplomats internationally and both in Pakistan to make sure that they jump in and play a constructive role in terms of engagement and doing something tangible, doing something practical, doing something empirical in stopping from that point coming where India and Pakistan are actually fighting against each other. But now when it comes towards Pakistan's dignity, Pakistan's grace, Pakistan's integrity, Pakistan's sovereignty, of course we can't lie dormant. We have to take action. But what we are doing right now is basically an action towards what they did to us. It's a retaliation. We are fighting back. And as a sovereign country, we have all the rights to fight back and safeguard our sovereignty.
Definitely. That's some very important points that you raised, and I'd like a question for Mr. Aneek Zafar as well. But we have breaking news coming in again. We'll move towards that very important development and continue with the conversation. Mr. Aneek Zafar, as we talk about, Mr. Hassan Gilani, he mentioned how despite the
International
nature, despite all the international community being engaged, despite how there was a lot of effort being done on the diplomatic front. One thing, India having its strategic allies, and those strategic allies that call themselves the champions of human rights. India has been committing gross human rights violations. They have been continuing with their oppressive policies and tactics, and they've been doing so with immunity from the international laws and norms, and immunity from the accountability system that is also in place for the rest of the world. What do you say about that? India having immunity, and despite being strategic allies with those champions of human rights that are, despite having evidence of India's extrajudicial and extraterritorial involvement and illegal activities, have not called out India and called for its accountability.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate that the world powers have let India throw its weight around, let it discredit, disrespect international agreements, like it is now claiming that it has suspended Indus Water Treaty, or trying to go in other countries and eliminate its detractors or people who disagree with it, like in Canada, or trying in Canada they eliminated one individual. In US they are trying to, and perhaps in Australia they also tried to. So this is all part of India trying to assert itself on a pretension that it is a global power. But I have entirely a different view to it, and my view is that rest of the Western world, where actual global powers exist, and even Russia or China, obviously not, they do not consider India as a global power. And West does want India as a counterweight against China, but West also does not like India throwing its weight around in the world as if it is actually a global power, right? So perhaps this time the world has let India learn a few lessons, that you cannot even be a power in your own region. You will be getting some beating while challenging countries smaller than you. Let's see how are your pretensions about being a global power.
If you allow,
Yeah.
if I just carry on with that, I think when we see as Hassan Saab has mentioned, that dismal response from the international community, I think we, Pakistan, stand for the peace, but we do not let anybody to attack us. So whenever India started it, international community got a chance to have a laboratory and see the Western, Eastern technology, and West is sitting silent, quiet, and peaceful. Others are sitting, we are fighting. So now for the international community, it has become economic, geopolitical laboratory, whereas quite rightly Nick said that let's see, the Western powers are just basing that, is India capable to represent us in this region or not? And other powers are saying, is Pakistan capable? And the world will see, and world have already seen who can represent whom. So I think international community is taking us as a laboratory for the future plannings.
Definitely. But coming towards India, of course, when we talk about the radical mindset that exists there and is part of the regime that is leading India right now, it is a regime that promotes hate speech, that promotes Islamophobia, that persecutes minorities, and it doesn't just stop there. It continues with its radical mindset, and it propagates it to try to convert a once secular India into a saffronized dictatorship. Of course, communal politics has been pursued there since very long, and that communal politics has plunged the very Indian society's fabric into radicalism, extremism, intolerance, and disregard for dissent. How do you think the Modi regime has damaged, and his communal politics has damaged India today so much that the Indian people, the Indian masses are demanding accountability? There's criminal silence on their media, there's leadership is silent, and we hear dissent from the Congress and Aam Aadmi Party, but even the political parties, even the religious leadership in India, even the former military officials are being sidelined, and there's only the jingoistic Modi and RSS hysteria that can be seen all over India.
Rafae, the history is very clear about it, that if you do not respect diversity, inclusion and equity of all ethnicities and religious groups in the country or in a nation or in an empire, you cannot proceed. If you just look into the Indian number, the trajectory it had, the economic positive trajectory, it got staled, and now it's going to get down. Though in the beginning, in the first era of Modi, he represented India differently, but at the sidelines, when he was just pushing the saffron and Hindutva ideology, it did sideline the all sane minds, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, even the Buddhists are not safe there. I mean, even if you go to check into the chicken neck side, I mean, people are not happy. So the history says, if no diversity, no development. And Modi's government will be taken in the history or written in the history as most damaging factor that India has ever faced. And even in, I mean, you can see that if you look into the southeastern side, let's go to the Indonesia. Indonesia is one of the biggest Muslim country. The reason of their positive trajectory is that they have included all the ethnicity and religious powers together, and that's what they are developing. So this Chevron movement by the Modi is not helpful for the India itself, not even for the Modi's party or the BJP, and it's not helpful for the region as well. So it's not going to help at all, and not going to help. I mean, it's now evident. It's now evident.
Everyone had been highlighting since very long, but now the Modi regime faces the music that it was itself beating.
Kept establishing earlier.
And it now faces the heat that it was playing with itself as well. Hassan Gilani, of course, as we're concluding and we're nearing towards the end of this segment, defense capabilities, talking about today. We saw how the Indian side, massive provocations, massive aggression, it kept on. Air defense systems was successful in neutralizing the threats that were coming from their side. When we talk about their air defense system, it has been neutralized.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's take the last 2 days as a litmus test. They struck, we responded. Where do we stand and where do they stand? Not a single aircraft of Pakistan's military has been downed by them. Not a single Pakistani military person has been shot dead by them. Keep aside the 30 casualties that we suffered in the form of those people who lost their lives as a result of that. Now look at the Indian side. Several LOC checkposts destroyed, depots destroyed, air defense system shattered, the brigade headquarters shattered, more than 80 Indian security personnel killed as a result of Pakistan's retaliation. So look at the colossal amount of loss or the scale of the loss that they have suffered. So if you take it as a comparative analysis or as a litmus test for what we have lost and what they have lost, I think you have the result who has superiority and who is having dominance. But now let's come to the casualties that we suffered in the form of those killed or those injured. If Pakistan wants, they can strike their civilians right now. If Pakistan wants, they can strike their civilian infrastructure right now, the way they did. Our mosques were targeted, our water reservoirs were targeted. We can do the same, but we are not doing the same because we are actually targeting only their military positions because we are the followers of law. We are a dignified nation, we are a graceful nation. We do not stoop to the level that our adversary has. We would never kill their civilians. Now the fact remains that the military has made it clear that we will not let a single drop of the blood go in vain. We will avenge that. This is exactly what we are doing.
Definitely, and of course a very proud nation and a very brave nation, and every single drop of blood is to be avenged. The nation stands resolute with its armed forces, and what we see, of course, the Indian side can make movies. The Modi regime, the RSS, the radical mindset there can make movies. They can create propaganda. They can continue with their jingoism. But when we talk about the on-ground realities, when you play with such fire, when you play with such chaos, of course, there are communal divides in your own country. There is this embarrassment that the Indian side is facing at the moment, and of course it will have to be accountable to its own people with regards to the devastation that is being seen in India, with regards to the provocations it was doing and the response that it has received. And of course it is something I think that the Indian side will have to make movies for a decade to try to save itself from the embarrassment that it faces in front of its own people. With that, I'll come towards the end of the segment. I'd like to thank all of the guests that we have in the studios that joined us for this very crucial conversation. Dr. Ali Hamza, Mr. Aneek Zafar and Hassan Gilani. Thank you all gentlemen for being part of the conversation. As we were discussing Operation BUNYAN Marsoos and how Pakistan's response is causing devastation across the border. Of course, Pakistan has been showing restraint since the past many days, but with such kind of patience being tested, a very brave and a very proud nation and the armed forces of the country have, of course, made the nation proud once again by delivering a very swift and effective response. See you in a little while when we'll continue with the Situation Room and continue talking about Operation BUNYAN Marsoos.